heard that one.
Thank you guys for coming up and answering things.
Hello. Do I have to stand up?
No.
Does it
No.
matter? I'll just sit. It's fine.
Sit.
All right. So one of the things I usually notice about like kid shows these days is that they have a target audience, but then the audience that actually watches the show is the complete opposite of what they wanted.
That's because you're in college. that's why you notice that.
Stop watching
Because
the
you're
shows.
watching the show. Like, you're like, oh my god, these My Little Ponies, they are awesome. Right? That's what you're getting. Yeah.
Speaking from a slightly younger generation, though, there's most people in my age range are still watching those shows out of college.
Sure they are, yeah. I'm
But
not,
and
yeah.
I think that's a product of how we grew up. Like as more media was introduced to us, like you're used to watching that. You have fun watching that because that's what you've grown up on. So it's of course older people are going to watch it, and a lot of the people who are creating the shows now are creating them so you will watch it. They know that you're going to watch it, so they're like, I'm going to aim this at 12-year-olds and make sure that the 25-year-olds can get all the innuendos out of it as well.
Yeah.
You know what's a really great example of this whole something for everybody kind of thing, and it sort of invokes like, and it's actually really intergenerational because it goes way back to the 70s, which is the new Scooby-Doo, Mystery Incorporated. That's a really great show. Like I ended up watching it without my kids because like this is fantastic, and yet my daughter liked it a lot because Scooby-Doo is funny, you know, and they do these little slapstick things, but there's a complex plot that's complex enough to keep you interested, but not so complex that you can get confused. And they would make these like in-jokes to people who had watched it for, 30 years ago. That's a
Yeah, and I think that to point out, like, if you develop for kids, it's not just like, you don't have to just say, like, I'm going to develop for kids, right? I think the whole point of the panel here is to sort of say, like, develop your kids, number one, is very complex. You don't just say, I want to make this simple game and all little kids will like it.
make it of bright colors.
Right? Like, the really, smart and brilliant developers will also develop for somebody else. It's just that you're now developing for kids. And so, take advantage of the fact that, like, you can grab multiple, like, people. Like, this game doesn't have to stay with, like, 5 to 7-year-olds. Like, an adult could play this, and it would still be awesome, right? So you don't want to think about, you don't want to feel like, oh, this is dumb. I don't want to develop a game for kids. Like,
Adult.
or think about it as developing it for everyone. Then.
Yeah.
Something that like can capture all of us together,
Right.
including children.
Can I ask my question now?
Oh.
No, sorry. It's just like
I'm sorry.
like the explanation was going to go into my question. Do you think it's gonna, like, basing off those shows, you think it'd be like easy or hard to make a game that they intentionally made it so that kids and adults can play it?
I think that's a challenge.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. Like the reason why My Little Ponies does so well is I forget the girl's name who's been doing it for years. She did Powerpuff Girls. She was on Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Like she's been doing the kind of stuff that has attracted multiple audiences for a while because she has that understanding of people. Honestly, if you don't feel like you have that best understanding, that's a great place where research comes in. Talk to adults, talk to kids about the themes or ideas that you want to put into whatever it is you're making, and see what kind of reactions you get to it, and see if you can throw things in there that are going to attract both audiences.
I think it's a challenge.
Okay, thank you.
My question was, like, as a kid, like, the way I played Mario and stuff, like, I didn't really have a lot of money, so I eventually, when I get the chance to play a certain Mario game, like Mario 3, it was a suggestion by someone else, and, what really made, like, us play games like Super Mario 1 or Mega Man 1, because, like, these games are super difficult, and, like, they have limited, like, middle text, and, like, it's really hard to learn. So what was it that made this game work for us as kids? I want to know what it was that made all these fast forward.
I would argue against your difficulty because they're all simple, but they have complex natures to them. You can play it in a hard way, and you you can get all the secrets and do all the difficult parts that get you the secret levels or the specific characters or whatever. But all Mario is jump and move to the right. Like, you can beat the game by just jumping and moving to the right for the most part. There are points in like Super Mario 3 where you have to know how to fly up to get over spaces, but otherwise, like, that simple form of interaction is there. You jump, you move to the right. You jump on top of things to kill it. And then as you play through it, you begin to realize, oh, well, I need fire to defeat the flowers. I can't jump on top of the balls and chains because they're just gonna bite me, so I should just stay away from that. But you don't learn all of that in level 1. Level 1, you learn the basic of, I walk to the right, I jump on things, I keep going until I reach the end. And that's the same way that they play it these days.
A little bit different. Mega Man, you could select stages. Like,
Oh, my Mega Man is
Mega Man is considered one of the more complex games, though, but I think Mega Man does have simple mechanics, just A's to jump, B's to shoot, and then you start learning like what the power-ups are. And what's interesting about Mega Man now is that simplicity is coming back. Like, what is that guy? Ken, May? I think. I mean, he just had a Kickstarter. Like Mighty Number 9, right? And my guess is that Mighty Number 9 will still have the same mechanics as Mega Man. Simple, but still able to continue. I think they are simple. Even the most complex games start out very simple. Ninja Gaiden is a really good example of that. Like 8-bit one, like my god, that game was hard, right? But at least I could beat the first level, right? I knew how to do that. Sort of like, and I think that's how you, even as a kid's game, that was sort of like really challenging.
The other silly thing is that people who had the 8-bit cartridges, I know as someone who was little and saved up to buy them, like once you got it, like you pretty much were stuck with it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you spent the equivalent of, I think, probably like 90 to 100 of today's dollars to buy one of those cartridges. Right? So I mean, like you would save up, and buy it, and you're like, tough if you don't like it, so you're just gonna keep playing
This
Mega
is
Man.
like our old man speech right now.
Yeah. You guys and your GameFly.
You guys can try any game you want now.
Yeah.
You know, a good thing that comes out of that, though, is just the idea that as kids, whether it was us as kids or kids now, that because they don't have this idea of boundaries behind technology, they're actually really resilient to, like, messing up. Unless you are outright constantly telling them that they're failing, they're going to keep going forward.
Yeah.
Like, that's why they do so well with technology. And they'll actually ask for you. They literally asked us when we tried to design stuff in Nickelodeon, like, if things are going to mess up, just don't show me. If you don't show me, I'm going to keep going forward. You'll eventually realize, oh, I'm not going forward for a reason. And yeah, if there's a way to kind of help them move forward at that point, that's good. But giving them gateways or just saying, nope, you failed, like that will stop them from playing your game.
They really did that to They yelled at him.
Well, yes, but it's not a barrier because you immediately come back most of the time. Unless you lose all of your lives, unless you have it on the one life one, then you always come back. You always go right back into the game. Even if you fail the level you're on, you go right back in. There are games where you get thrown that, like, something.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. So,
It's so over the top though. It's not like you failed. It's like BAM!
like,
Right?
but,
So
and
it's
it's
a little
not like,
different.
yeah, it's not like I personally am like, so like if a teacher did that to me on a test, I think I'd feel really bad. But when a game does that to me, it's something different. Then I'm like, I want to try again. Like, and then there's been like, we've done research on like, why do kids like games more than like schools? And part of it's pretty obvious. Like, failing in games is so different than failing in school.
It's how you win the game.
Yeah, like, cause like, I can fail multiple times in a game. They can tell me I failed. Like, the announcer can say, "You suck," headshot, like, you know.
Yeah.
Like, but I would still be like, you know what? I would have proved this announcer wrong because I bought this game and I had multiple chances to play. So I think that to that end, like, it's when we say it's showing the failure, it's almost kind of like, no, you're doing it wrong. Or I guess what it is, testing.
Well, no. Sometimes you get just areas of where you get stuck and you just can't move forward. Like the idea, like if they died and then the game kept playing but they couldn't do anything,
Oh, right,
that
right,
would be
right.
a
Yeah.
no failure. Like
So
that's something
I-
you don't put in front of a kid because then they're like, what's going on? Because that's the same as
That's
school.
true. Yeah.
In in school, if you fail, everyone else keeps moving forward and you don't.
Oh, yeah.
The reason why games tend to work well for kids and technology works well is you fail, but then you just keep moving forward, and you can fail as many times as you want, but eventually you figure it out, and eventually you learn and move forward.
So I could see a game like Call of Duty Zombies, right? Zombie mode where like you're playing with a friend and like you die first, right? And you're just watching your friend play, right? As a kid, I think that would be terrible. Like my friend is like
yeah.
blasting all the way. I can't play. Come on, let me back in. I'm sorry, you can't jump in until your friend dies. I think that's a terrible way to design a game for a kid. It would be so bad even if that was it. I don't know, for whatever reason, Call of Duty Zombies works for adults. Maybe we can wait. Maybe I could be like, you know, my friend will die
Maybe
soon.
we like zombies.
Maybe I like watching my friend die and get killed by zombies, but like for a kid like to wait that long to jump back in. But so Smash Brothers does do it right. It's just like fall off the whatever the platform. You just get back in until your life is gone.
Hi. So I recently came into a job where I have to be over 2 teams of people in very, very different things. They're both comic books, but one of them is from 8 to 18 and the other one is from 18 to 40. So one of these things I have to make is very violent, very gory, very graphic, and this other thing is like Pokemon. So I have a very hard time switching my brain back from both these things. Do you guys have any suggestions on things I can do between that? Like keeping, like
The
going
blood,
from
no
that
blood here, no blood.
Should I just make a list?
Change your shirt when you go between the roles. Like have a jacket for when you're making the badass comic, and then I mean sometimes it's like a little cue like that.
Yeah,
Only half kidding.
I'd agree with that. Put yourself in the mindset of that. It's going to be a little hard for you for the 8 to 18 because that's a very very wide area where you could go from anywhere from totally raunchy to totally safe. Like, so that'll be a little difficult. But like Greg said, put yourself in that space. Like if you're working on that one, make sure that there's kid stuff around you to remind yourself. Like, oh, maybe we're like. Maybe you put a teddy bear next to you and say, well, have I gone too far?
What does this bear think?
I'm telling you right now.
What would bear do?
Really, for above 18, you kind of have a little more leeway to do whatever you think is right, but it's going to be that younger range where you need something to remind yourself, like, have I pushed the limits too much?
Like I was subscribed to the grandma rule I post online. Like, could my grandma read this and be proud of me? You know, like,
Yeah, I told my class the same thing. I'm like, if you can tell your mom about this project that you're working on, then I'm probably not concerned that it's breaking any UV rules. It's a really cool project. What's that? Well, you can also you can find a really good quote that has to deal with designing for kids and print that out and put it on the computer that you're going to design the kids stuff with.
But I mean, you can always ask the kid, or at least ask his parent, if you always feel that way.
It will also depend on where you're planning to send out these comics, because depending on the country, you're going to have different. Well, in Japan, you can have a little more grit to it with younger audiences, because the younger audiences there get into more complex, nerdy scenarios than say U.S. kids or EU kids do.
Any more questions?
Why are you here?
Sorry. You're both going to ask a question.
My question is.
It's on.
Okay. I was thinking that I guess you mentioned earlier about how you shouldn't, I guess, restrict any, make yourself restrictive when designing a game because it could appeal to both children and adults. I was wondering about how much context should you add for the children and the families can become interested. Like if you were to add, I guess, a little bit of story context into the game mechanics, would it alienate the children or the adults, or what would be like the right balance?
I think Plants and Zombies kind of does it pretty nice because the context is so simple. Like they show like the animation really shortly. It's like the house gets. You didn't even see the title screen. Like there's a zombie horde. So it's just like a very short story. Or even like Angry Birds. Like that story is like short, man. Like like bird, like eggs gone, king's gone away. Like so we already instantly know it's a revenge tale. Like or like it's like Taken. So you don't always have to go full context. Like you can go very short introduction. I think that, and then people just. I think that's another appeal to Angry Birds. It's like I already know. I'm going after those people. They took my eggs. I saw them do it. It's kind of like awesome.
And it sometimes can be as simple as like the theme or context. Like if you Mario will appeal to the whole family because typically the dad at least, or even maybe the mom too, like will have been they played it as a kid. So that's why they'll gladly sit down with their child and play Mario on the Wii. It's got the simple controls that they can get into, no problem. They'll get into the dance games too because it's music that's popular right now. So parent knows it, kid knows it. They both know how to dance in front of the camera and act silly.
Yeah.
That works fine. Sports games kind of work in the same way too. Like if your dad likes baseball and you like baseball, even if it's a kids themed baseball game, dad's more likely to sit down with you and play it. So you have to think of it in the context of the audience that you're going.
But if you think of Punch Out, like not as a kid's game, but just in terms of like context, like there's almost no story except for you fight a couple guys and you see a dude ride on a bike and you're running behind him, then you're fighting some new guys and they play it up. There's not really a lot of context. If you think of also the Lego Star Wars games that people like a lot, is that there's some context because people bought it because it's Lego Star Wars. Like so they're pretty sure what's going to happen, so you don't have to get too much in the story, but you can approach it in a fun way, which is what that property does.
Or even no story, like flower. It's just like I saw like a plant grow, and all of a sudden I move. Or Journey, like they don't even talk. Like, there's no story.
That's true.
You can't play Journey for kids.
No, I've played it with
Okay, well, flower at least you can play for kids, right? But flower, right? It's just this.
Hello. More questions? You can just shout out your questions.
I don't like, this is probably a quick question.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
This is a kid's out. I'm just wondering, does these, like, Angry Birds that those kids see as they Ratchet and Clank, what are some, like, very general common elements of these games that people consider to be something like
What do you think, Taylor? I'm being a teacher there, sorry. What is it? Well, humor. So there's some other things, like kids can get through them, right? So I mean, that's something else that there's an accessibility there. We've used that word a lot.
They
Accessibility.
both start out very simple.
But you know the really interesting thing, like you did a good comparison between Ratchet and Clank and Angry Birds. Like it's sort of like Angry Birds has sort of this 2D view that feels very simple, right? There's not a lot of wild like particle animations going on. Whereas Ratchet and Clank, like my goodness, there's like things going everywhere which way. I could totally see like grandma getting like utterly confused, not being able to like play Ratchet and Clank. Kids would. I think kids would. I mean, kids love Ratchet and Clank. Like the storyline's hilarious. But when you start looking at like, well, who is my audience? Am I targeting just for children? I could crank up the graphics as much as I want with kids. I don't think that's a problem. But when I start thinking, crank it down.
Crank them down.
Yeah. But I think when I start thinking about older adults and families that want to play with the kids, then I have to start considering like, well, how complex does it look like for moms and dads, right? Like, is it like, it's kind of why Candy Crush is so like appealing. It's just fruit and candy and like bright light. It's the reason why casinos, like, it's like a casino in your pocket. It's basically what Candy Crush is, right? Like all the bright lights and sounds. Yeah, it really is. Like, you know, like but that's actually kind of interesting. Like, if you go to casinos, like, and you see the slot machines, there's reasons why people go to those things. The lights and sounds, sort of the ambient noise, the way that like the little subtle motions. Those capture people, right? I keep telling my wife, don't go to these machines. Like, they're trying to pull you in for a reason. But we've done a lot of studies on like slot machines, and to know that like that's why you can design things that are beautiful like slot machines, and that's what attracts the eye, and people will go to it. So I'm not telling you to like steal money out of like people when you design, but it's those kind of things. But whereas Ratchet and Clank, like if I made a slot machine look like Ratchet and Clank, with like crazy wild things going on, I'm not sure if people would feel comfortable going to it. So I think kids would go to the National Boston.
I have a really good question. I want to know if it was okay to like have a game or like anything that was like kid friendly and give like one enemy that's super random and like disturb. Like is it okay to do a transition on that? I was thinking like Legend of Zelda over at time where you go into the zombie tomb and then out of the door the zombie things and out of the door and suddenly it's a little terrible. You know, and they're completely different from all the other enemies in the game. I don't know if that's a okay thing.
That's up to you.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you like, you're gonna have parents who are fine with their kids playing with zombies and scary things. You're gonna have parents who aren't fine with their kids playing with zombies and scary things.
Minecraft has
And
its own
you just have to decide which side you want to be on.
If you think of Kingdom Hearts, the bad guys are those kind of like black blobby people, right? And then what's that? Yeah, the Heartless. And then it starts to get, then that shadow thing comes. It starts to get kind of creepy in terms of like, then it gets kind of scary, but you can make him, what's that?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the animation. I mean, we've seen studies that show like the color red is very detrimental. Like but for whatever reason, like if I see something like slash away with green pops out for whatever reason, that's fine. So like you can tone it down. You can still have that creepy element in a way toned down. I mean, what is that game? Mad World from like the Wii. It's like scary looking because like it's black and white, but there's red all over, right? But if it were like pink or like blue, it might actually, I mean, those color, like the psychology of colors right there, right? So in those sorts of things, like, I mean, yeah, there's like blades and stuff. We wouldn't make Mad World for children, but you sort of see like these, they did that for a reason. The black and red contrast was really visceral. And so now if you decide, so those colors and the sound like that. So it depends on creepy. Sometimes creepy can be cute. Like, I mean, there's just some things that I'm like, oh, that's creepy. It's kind of cute, right? Like, I think I can get into this, right? So it just depends on the tone that you put in. Like, you're the animator or the designer. You set the tone.
And kids are totally into creepy cute right now
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Like
Like the
Monster
zombie
High
rats.
and all that stuff. Like creepy is cool for kids right now.
What's your question?
Yeah, Monster High.
What's that little brown Japanese monster?
Domo.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of cute.
There's those ugly dolls that are out there.
There's like these weird
Kids, I mean, all the boys who are playing Minecraft love the creepers and the zombies.
Yeah.
So, and they're not like some of the fun part about Minecraft's like monsters, they are kind of creepy, but because they're such a simple graphic, like it's unrealistic enough, I think, that kids realize like, oh well, it's not real, so I'm not gonna be that scared of it, but I know I'm supposed to be.
I don't think I've ever heard a parent think about Minecraft. Yeah. Like,
I mean, if you want to make a really un-kid-friendly game, make a game that scans the parent's face and then makes that the bad guy. Like, I mean, if you're gonna try and so here's the other thing you can do as a design technique is design the opposite. So if you're trying to make a kid-friendly game, actually plot out the most un-kid-friendly game you can, and then start identifying what it is about that makes it un-kid-friendly to you, and then think about that in your design process. Like, don't do these things because we've sort of figured out to us this is very un-kid-friendly.
All right. Thank you, Craig, Greg, and Jason for coming out today. Everybody, our panel. Thank you so much, and that's it. Thank you guys.
Great, thank you, everyone. Open invitation if you want to come to the kids team thing. Just send me an email, gwalsh@uwalsh.edu, and we can set you up for that. And if sometime during the school year you want to bring your game to kids team that you've worked on so far, we can play with it there and give you good ideas for how to make it better. And then we'll move into
Yes.
Sorry I didn't come today. I had something to do with an ODK application. Did we just go over stuff, or did we have to play a game?
Oh, I think they moved it to part of the 5. I just got here when I thought they had moved it like to part of the 5 at the beginning of this meeting.
Oh, right.
That's what I got the email from. But I didn't get here till like 5:20. So I didn't. No, I'm gonna ask Chris.